Welcome to Lost Culture, your one-stop destination for everything pop culture. My name is Aston, and today we're going to do a review and a quick recap for the new Netflix show, The Get Down. So, The Get Down is a brand new show on Netflix. It's about 6 episodes, I believe. Yeah, 6 episodes. The initial episode is about an hour and a half, and I believe the rest of them follows about an hour in runtime. So, it's a pretty easy show to get through in a weekend. I'm just going to do each show individually. I'm gonna do the first. I'm gonna probably have 6 recaps for this show. I don't know if there's gonna be a second season, but if so, I probably am gonna do a second season too when that season comes out next year. But right now, I'll probably just knock these out. I don't know if I'm gonna do them all in this weekend, but I'm gonna do each episode individually since they're an hour long. So let's just jump right into it. So this show is a period piece that takes place in the 1970s. Me personally, I don't really enjoy period pieces, but this show, I don't know if it's the period or if it can't be the period. It's more the content that it's following. So, like me personally, like I said, I hate World War One movies. I hate movies in any like time period. I hate westerns. I even hated the car wash. So with that being said, like I actually enjoyed this series, which is in the same period as the car wash, I believe, maybe a few years earlier. But besides that, I enjoyed this series, this episode. I enjoyed. I liked it, and mainly because of what they're talking about, like the spray painting, the music, the break dancing, and everything. I enjoy all those aspects of what's going on. Even like the landscape of what's going on. I love how they turned New York back into that retro feel. How it looks all old school. We see the tagging all over the walls. We see the old school metal Cadillacs riding down the streets. It's just I love it. Like I really enjoy it. I love when they do the out like the big wide like the cities, like, the skyline views and everything. It's like amazing. And the characters I enjoy evolve. So let's just jump right into it. Let's talk about Ezekiel. Ezekiel is basically the main character. He has like 4 friends that he hangs out with who are all siblings. Well, it's 3 friends that he hangs out with at the beginning of the show. He turns into a fourth one. But the 3 main people that he hangs out with, we see is Boo Boo, Ra Ra, and Dizzy. These 3 are all brothers. Ra being more of Ezekiel's best friend. Dizzy's the older brother. And we see Boo Boo, the younger brother. And they all seem pretty tight, pretty close. We find out that Ezekiel is kind of like an orphan. We found out that we was watching the episode. We found out his mom died. 6 months later, his dad died to a drug-related incident. So we see he's kind of on his not really on his own. He lives with his aunt, but he has like this little Harry Potter thing going on. Like he lives in his little corner. He used the sheets to close off his area, and we see like his uncle's kind of hard on him. I don't know. It's not really his uncle. It's just his girlfriend, his auntie's boyfriend, and we see like he's kind of hard on him. He just wants him to achieve, and with that, like it's yeah. So starting out the episode, we get to see Ezekiel. He's really talented with poems. So that makes me believe that he's actually the guy that we see in the intro. We see like a rapper on stage, and by the fact that Ezekiel is good in Ezekiel, I'm sorry about that. That Ezekiel is actually good with poems. That leads me to believe that he's actually the rapper that we see on stage. Besides, like the fact that their characteristics are kind of similar, so it's not the same person. Like obviously, it's not the same like actual person, but I think it might be the actual same characters. So we'll find out maybe later on. But so with that, we have to see that Ezekiel was actually very intelligent, but he doesn't want to stick out. We see he wins a contest in class for like the poetry of the year or something like that. When he's called on to actually perform his poem, he tells the teacher like his back is injured. He didn't write the poem, even though we find out later on by Malaya, like his love interest, that he actually did write the poem. So this is his last day in school, so we're not really going to see too much school going on, but maybe you'll get to see him stepping up, using his intelligence in other aspects of the show. Hopefully, we get to see that. And besides that, like, yeah, hopefully he finds another way to use his intelligence or his poetry in another way. Well, we obviously know he's going to use his poetry another way, because when you actually we don't get to see Shaolin until later on in the episode, but when we see him and they actually start to form their friendship, we see he actually asks him to be the MC. But before that, we see Ezekiel is going on basically on a mission, trying to win Malaya's heart back. I don't know what happened in the past or what's going on, but they seem to have this on and off type of relationship. We see when they kiss, she pulls away and like we can't do this anymore. We can't keep doing this. So obviously it's happened before, and it continues to happen. So maybe they'll actually end up going. I don't know if she's gonna fall all the way off because we see when she goes to the Inferno that he goes there. He's desperate to get in. He's desperate to get in. And after everything he went through, like when he first met Shaolin, like when he's in the little record shop in the wrong side of town, and the Savages came and basically was holding the shop up for protection money, and Shaolin steals the record. We see like all this going on. We see like the double chase going on. Ezekiel's chasing Shaolin, the Savages are chasing Shaolin, and everything. And I guess that's a nice little like shot, like how it's going on. But I was confused why the Savages really didn't chase Ezekiel. But I don't know. Maybe they had like some type of beef with Shaolin. But besides that, like I said, that's how Ezekiel first meet. That's the first time we see Ezekiel meet Shaolin. We hear him speaking of Shaolin multiple times. We hear like Dizzy's really like, impressed by him. All of Dizzy's little brothers, they might just be impressed by Shaolin just because Dizzy is. Like I know I had an older brother. Like his favorite teams end up being my favorite teams. He would always talk about them and things of that nature. So maybe with Dizzy, he's doing the same thing to his younger siblings. Cause we see, I'll get to Dizzy later on. Let's just stay on Ezekiel. So with Ezekiel, we see he actually like he steals shoes from his uncle. We see Ra Ra gives him one of his dad's outfits and everything, so he can go to the Inferno and dance with Malaya. And when he gets to the Inferno, he can't get in. Like I said, he's desperate to get in. Luckily, from the run-in he had in with Shaolin earlier, that Shaolin gets him in for like a price. And the funny thing about this, like how they built Shaolin up, like to be like a superhero kind of like a superhero with the karate and everything. Shaolin really didn't do any karate. Like, he was in the back. He like, look, I can kill you with just a blink of my eye or everything. He was really hesitant to actually fight Ezekiel. And and she gets the upper hand on Ezekiel, he see that Ezekiel is really willing to die for, he's willing to die for a record so he can give to his not really his girlfriend, and it's pretty funny. So Ezekiel obviously ended up making the choice to give Shaolin the record that Shaolin previously stole from him, so he can get to the club to actually dance with Malaya. And we see Ezekiel goes like to this crazy accent. Him and Shaolin comes up with this crazy plan to get the DJ to actually play the record for him, which ended up working, but what not because of the plan, more because of Shaolin's drugs, and he promised to give him more, so the DJ can decide, hey, I'll play the record for this price. With that being said, we actually see the Savages. Like we heard earlier, the Savages had a plan for Inferno, and when Ezekiel and Malaya's in there dancing and everything, we see that the Savages actually make their way in. They shoot up the place, and we see Cadillac survives. Cadillac's a pedophile, basically. We see Cadillac survive. We see the DJ end up dying, and that basically becomes in for Malaya's story. But so let's just stick to Ezekiel's story. Kind of hard. Like these stories are all like intertwined so tightly. So with Ezekiel, we see after that, like he goes back to his friends, and then him. That's really it for Ezekiel this episode. Well, no, we get to see him MC, but I'll come back to that once I get in Shaolin's area. So now we're moving on to Malaya. We see Malaya comes from a very strict family. Her parents, well, not her parents, her father is like a pastor. They own a church, their family. So it seems like everybody's family own something except for Ezekiel. It seemed like Ezekiel is like the lower of the three families. None of them seem like they're upper class or anything. But Dizzy's family and Malaya's family seems to be doing a little bit better for themselves than Ezekiel's family. So we see that with Malaya, her father's very strict on her. He wants her to, even her sister's kind of a tattletale. Like her father doesn't want anything that's not church or God based inside their lives. We see when she's singing the disco song, her sister tells her father, and Malaya's put on punishment, so her plans to actually go and pursue a record deal really can't happen the way she originally planned for. She originally planned to say she was staying at Yolanda's house, and Yolanda said she was staying with their other friend, and that was their plan for them to get out. Basically, they're all staying at each other's houses. So when she gets put on punishment, she's not allowed out anymore. So she's forced to sneak out. But I understand how she was on punishment, but she was still allowed to go hang out with her friends during the day, just not stay the night, which is pretty cool parenting, I guess, to a degree. But when she sneaks out, she goes to the Inferno. She meets a couple older guys. Well, her and her friends meet a couple older guys. They're hanging out with Cadillac. Cadillac's basically telling her, like, hey, you come back with me, I'll put you on. Like, I own the DJ. I finance his record label. Wasn't for me, he won't have anything. So, so once he tells Malaya, hey, come back to the hotel with me, she's not really feeling it. Basically, she's telling like, oh, I just do this my own way. I'll just win the contest on my own. And she bounces out. Ezekiel gets there. She dances with Ezekiel. They're doing a little on-off thing again. We see them get separated. She's dancing with Cadillac. And the thing with me, when she's dancing with Cadillac, she doesn't really. At first, she's fighting it, and then she just starts to enjoy herself with it. I see. So maybe that'll play a role into the future. Maybe her and Cadillac have something going on in the future. But right now, we see that's when the Savages come in. And they shut all that down. They just shoot up the whole place. A couple people get hit. A lot of people get hit. You see Ezekiel's protecting her. He makes sure her and her friends get out of there. He walks them all home. And that's really all. That's like a really good thing for him. And we see like again, Malaya turns Ezekiel down for the second time in the episode, telling him like, look, in school you say you want me, but the poem you wrote for me, you were scared. I think that she said the poem was for her, but the teacher said the poem about his parents. But I don't know. She tells him like he's scared to man up and step in front of the class and be himself. So how can he want to be with her if he don't know who he really wants to be when it comes down to the crunch? I understand that. Like you don't want somebody who's gonna be flip floppy. Like oh, I completely understand that. Like she doesn't want somebody who's gonna be flip floppy on her. But as she said, she doesn't really want him to hold. She loves him so much, and she didn't want him to hold her back from music. And she knows if she beats with him, it's gonna like kind of hold her back. So maybe in the further, like I personally think in future episodes they're actually gonna end up getting together and being together. So yeah, and we see when she gets home, she's actually get kicked out, and we see like the kind of like I don't want to say slumlord, but like crooked businessman that we heard about Cruz. He's actually her uncle, so he comes and picks her up, and he basically takes her in. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but we know obviously she can call her on her uncle, who's like I'm assuming he's very involved in her life. If she can just call him, he comes so easily. Like the club knew when she called the club, the secretary or the phone, the lady whoever answered the phone, she like just knew like oh it's Malaya calling for you. It was just like natural for her. So it's obviously a normal thing for her to call the club for him. So I'd love to see like, the aspect of their relationship. We know he's like pretty paid. We know everybody else seems like not on his level of richness, like finances wise. So I would love to see how that turns out their relationship and how his storyline actually furthers on the story. But now we're gonna move on to Shaolin. Shaolin is basically like he's the idol for everybody. He's the glue that pulls kind of the street element and the kids together. Like he's obviously older than Dizzy and everybody, than Ezekiel and everybody, but he still finds himself drawn to them and them drawn to him. easily like I'm sure it's easier for high school students to look up to college students or college age people where they see like Shaolin's like a legend in these streets to them. They see his artwork around Shaolin 007. Shaolin has like five different names, might I add. Like it's Shaolin 007, Shaolin the Fantastic, Shaolin the Lady Stealer, or something like that. Shaolin is a man of many talents. We see him breakdance. We see him kind of do karate. We see he's a all all like an all state track and field athlete. He's out there running. He's dodging. He's a we see he's jumping. He's doing parkour before parkour was even big. One thing I have an issue with when Shaolin jumps from the building and almost fall. Well, past that part, when Shaolin actually makes it across, that fire on that building that he's jumping to looks so fake. I think they could have had better special effects or even had real fire there. I don't know what the budget was. I heard they had like a pretty decent budget for a Netflix series, larger than normal. Obviously, it had a pretty decent budget. They had Jaden in the show, so hopefully, hopefully that improves going on. Like it was a couple of things. Like even they did like one of the I forgot what it was. The show like got destroyed part of Brooklyn. I wasn't really buying it. It didn't look real at all. It just didn't feel natural to me. Something was just off about it. And I had that issue a couple times in the show. But besides that, like I said, it was a pretty good show. But there's a special effects, but I understand it's a television show and it's on Netflix, so their budget isn't going to be there fully. But besides that, like I said, I was really enjoying it. And Shaolin's part, he seemed I don't know, it just seemed odd to me that he was hanging out with such young people. We see he's drug dealing. We see he's kind of with the Aunt Anne, I think her name was. We see he's kissing her. She's like, he's bringing her snacks. He's dealing her drugs. Well, not really. He's dealing drugs for her, but he falls in line under Wolf, which I personally think Wolf is up to something. We see he was checking his watch multiple times. He's right before like the Savages came in. He was trying to get Cadillac to go upstairs. So I don't know. He was trying to like warn Cadillac from like from the Savages because we know this from the news report. We know the Savages are just hired muscle. They weren't really just there because they wanted to be. They were there because they were hired to do a job. That's why they were there. So I don't think they actually had any beef with the lady or anything. But I just feel like the Savages were hired guns to be there and do a job, which they failed at. But I don't know. Like I really do feel like something's up with Wolf. We know like Shaolin has an issue with Wolf. Cadillac has an issue with Shaolin. So Shaolin's street, even though he's really popular, we see he was actually chose off of the street to be brought into the business to deal with drugs and whatever else he's doing for him. Because we know she said that she likes him young. So obviously she's probably and the way she kissed him, she's doing more than just having him deal with drugs. You might get to see later on what their relationship actually is. We know whatever the relationship is, Cadillac does not like it. He does not like this young guy kissing his mom and doing all these things in front of everybody. So we'll see how that like we'll see how Cadillac and Shaolin's relationship turns out too. That's a crazy one. And I like that Shaolin's has another mission. Like we see, he was forced to put down spray painting by Grandmaster Flash. That's who his Grandmaster ended up turned out to be, and he's 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 actually has goals to be like a DJ. We see Grandmaster Flash tells him to go get the disc, well, the disc, but the actual record, which is the reason he actually stole the record in the first place because he was on a mission trying to get the approval of Grandmaster Flash. So maybe Grandmaster Flash would take him in and teach him things. Obviously, he's already like mentoring him to a degree because he's calling him Grasshopper, which is a throwback to like the whole little karate thing that's going on. We see even when Dizzy talks about Shaolin, he tells him like his hands are a samurai sword and everything. So this whole thing is really about it's really based in karate. We even see Shaolin's with the little the Jet Li or Bruce. I think it was Bruce Lee. He had the Bruce Lee on his. Yeah, it was Bruce Lee. He had Bruce Lee on his belt with the kung fu everything. So we see like the kung fu influence is very heavy in this show, which I actually like, honestly. And I like that's really all we have like for Shaolin. Oh, we see Shaolin takes the boys back to his little. He calls it a dojo, which really just like a bandit building, which happens to still have electricity and water. So he's living it up. That's where he uses. That's where he spends his free time to actually practice recording his music. He says, and then besides that, he has a little girlfriend. We never seen his girlfriend house, so maybe she'll turn up later on and be like a prime character. But besides that, this is where Shaolin hangs out at. He tells him, like, look, don't tell anybody about this. This is our secret. You guys are lucky that I invited you here. And he takes the kids to the Get Down, which is the big party that Grandmaster Flash actually hosts this. I don't know how else he hosts this party, but he hosted this party, and it was weird to me that they let such young kids in. We see Boo Boo, who was the youngest of the bunch. He's dancing with a adult woman. They're letting them in. They're dancing on them. They're just enjoying them. And that was kind of weird for me that Boo Boo was actually allowed to dance with these adult females. They just didn't have any problem with it. And then back to that, like back to Ezekiel, this is the first time we can see Ezekiel actually rap. The first time he chokes, and then like a minute or two later, after Shaolin does a little breakdance thing to save basically his reputation, we see Ezekiel actually perfect it, but he actually raps and he's on key. He gets all the worries out. He's not really worried about it. He's just being himself now. He's just rapping by him and his friends, and everybody enjoyed it. The club ate it, and Grandmaster Flash gave him like his stamp of approval. Like, yeah, that could be your wordsmith. So there we have it for Shaolin and Ezekiel. That's all we have for Ezekiel. Now we're moving on to Dizzy. So Dizzy, we see, is more of the artistic type. He's a hippie. He just doesn't dress like the rest of the group. He's a little bit older. He's the older brother of the three, Ra Ra and Boo Boo. And he's just different. He's Jaden. He's really just Jaden in the 1970s. We see he paints a lot. His dad comes in like, hey, I see you're wearing gloves now. He's like, no, I don't spray paint no more. Which it turns out ended up being a lie. He actually took Boo Boo with him to spray paint on top of one of Shaolin's old marks. And like even when he was talking about Shaolin right there, like Shaolin's like this legendary guy who sees everything and he's gonna come and get mad at him. So and in that scene when he's there with Boo Boo, we see he's actually teaching. In the past, he's actually taught Boo Boo how to spray paint. He's telling him like, "Why you letting it drip? Do it how I told you how to do it." So he's actually mentoring his little brother how to do this thing. And one big thing about this is we see they're actually trying to crack down on the tagging and everything that's going on. They find like it's vandalism. Even his dad tells him like, "Look, next time you get arrested, I'm gonna leave you in there." His dad actually seems mad cool about it. His dad seems real artistic and everything. We see him with the cape on. I don't think he's a pimp, but he's kind of a pimp. So we see it, but he kind of know he's a pimp or not, because him and his wife actually left together. So I don't know what is actually going on yet. Like we don't really get too much of an explanation of their parents. We just know they own the business downstairs that they live on top of. So that's good. We see their family is real close knit. They let all the kids' friends come to eat. I remember when I was in high school, I had a friend's house like that. Their mom would cook for us. Anytime we stayed, like anytime we came over, we was always welcome to stay for dinner. So that's kind of house that Rara kind of like, well, Dizzy's parents kind of has. He's basically the safe haven for all the kids to come hang out at and to stay out of trouble. And I really like to see that. That's why all the kids are so close. They can just hang out there. And like I said, like with Dizzy, he's obviously the outcast. Everybody thinks he's weird. Ezekiel calls him weird. When Dizzy's even with the other taggers and everything, they call him weird. Like one of the guys like, hey, like I think he's cool. I think he's super cool, but he's super weird. So everybody thinks Dizzy's weird. Even with the artist, he's weird. With his siblings, he's weird. He's the outcast. Never the outcast, just the awoke one. Like he's woke. That's what they call it. He's woke. He's more in tune with the universe and everything. He just wants peace and want everybody to get along. And I like that. So like when Shaolin actually meets up, everybody like who is this? Who is this? And once he tags on side of the rock, everybody like, oh, you're Shaolin. Like this Shaolin right here. Look at the shoes. And I like that. And it's like Disney really didn't do too much in this episode, so we're gonna move on to Ra Ra. So with Ra Ra, we found out from the beginning he's basically a big Star Wars fan. I'm a big Star Wars fan, so I like him. He's not my favorite character. Dizzy actually ended up being my favorite character. I don't know what it is about Dizzy. I like him. I yeah, it might just be because of Jaden. I actually like a lot of things that Jaden do, but so that's why Dizzy ended up being my favorite character. We see Ra Ra's more like the best friend, the wingman, and the advisor to Ezekiel. Like when Ezekiel was having thoughts about um, having like regrets, never regrets, but trying to figure out what he should do to get with Malaya. He's telling him like, hey, you need to get fly. You need to learn these dance moves. You need to go get you a gun. I think he's kind of joking about the gun. He wasn't really wholeheartedly serious about it. He need to tell him he need to get Suave Ebola. Like, yeah, like he's there. He's the wingman. He's hyping him up, letting him know, like, what you gotta do. You gotta do this. You gotta do this. You gotta do this. And it works out with him. But at the same time, like, it kind of leaves him hanging. It tells him, like, look, what you gotta go do. You gotta go get to the inferno. You gotta go get in. You coming with me? Nah, I can't do that. You gotta go by yourself. So it's kind of messed up, but it's super cool at the same time. Like, Ra Ra is his best friend. He helps him out with everything. He gives him advice. He even like he looks out for him and everything. So Ra Ra didn't have too much going on his own in this episode. We don't really get to see him by himself. Like I said, we found out he's a Star Wars fan. We found out he's Ezekiel's best friend, and that's really it. So let's move on to Boo Boo. So Boo Boo is the younger brother. Like I said, we don't get to see too much of him. Only time we get to see like he's kind of like ready to fight Shaolin when Shaolin just randomly shows up and he's talking crazy to Ezekiel, calling Malaya like bitches and whatnot. We see Boo Boo's willing to stand up for him. You know, he's the youngest one. The Shaolin just looks at him and laughs like, okay, young buck, whatever. And we see he's actually really interested in, well, he's trying to figure out how everything works at Shaolin's club, like his little clubhouse, whatever. So that's really it for the episode. Like, it's like a really good episode. I know I kind of skipped over some side characters like Cadillac and Wolf, but they really didn't have too many big parts of this episode. So maybe on the next episode they'll get bigger. But as for right now, I guess it's like I like the show. My only gripe about it is when. So let me do my ups and downs for it. So I like how the show is with the music. I love how the music is another character and it's built in. Not how like Suicide Squad did. I think Suicide Squad didn't do it right. But more like how Guardians did it. I love how they do the music. I love the castings for these roles. Like I love like Jaden. Jaden fits his part like perfectly. Who else had a nice part? Malaya's dad. I like how he is. And I guess like a lot of like famous characters are in here. I like the subject matter. My downside for this, like the special effects that sometimes aren't really that good. Like we can tell it's a TV show at times. I know I shouldn't be critical about this because it's a TV show and it's on Netflix also. But the special effects, like the fire, sometimes look really fake. Another thing that I didn't like, but like at the same time, I liked how they shot the little cuts to like they were talking about an issue and they'll do cuts. We'll see like the savages walking around. We'll see like shots of New York. We'll see news footage and everything. And it has that old school look to it. It's real grainy, kind of like a yellowish tint to it. But at the same time, I felt like they did it too frequently. I wish they calmed down a little bit, not as often. And that's like my biggest complaint about it, about this episode. But that's like so. Besides that, that's like my only complaint. And so thank you for tuning in. As always, if you like what you heard, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. There's going to be 5 more of these videos. Hopefully it get better. I know it's kind of jumping around. Maybe It'll be more organized for the next one because we'll actually have a base of who these characters are. So always thank you for watching. My name is Aston. Don't forget to follow the channel on Instagram at lost_culture and to follow me on Instagram at saint_aston. And stay lost.